Let me just say that what I tried to do is just kind of want to give us kind of an overview of what the ballot measures are. I'm not here to tell you how to vote or what to vote for, just to give you information so you can make an informed decision. My opinion as to how to vote may be different than yours, and that's fine. But as long as you're an informed voter, I think that's what the important part is. First of all, with regard to the judges, that's probably one of the most frequent questions that I get is to what do we do about the judges? There are 3 judges for us that will be voted on. It is simply a retention vote, which means that we are voting either to keep a judge or not to keep a judge. It's not a matter of you can pick a different one. It's we're under what's called the nonpartisan court plan, which means that if we would not retain a judge, a commission would select 3 more individuals to be selected by the governor. The governor would select that person, and then that person ultimately back up for a retention vote again. So it's not a matter of saying we want someone, we can say we want someone else, we just don't know who that someone else would be. So there are 3 on there. One's a Supreme Court judge, Judge Richard Titleman, and 2 Court of Appeals judges, which is Philip Hess and James Dowd. It's difficult to find information about judges. I get that. I'm a judge myself, obviously. Certainly you can really get into it and read all their opinions and that sort of thing. But the Missouri Bar does do a survey of attorneys, and if you want to get information about that, that's where I would recommend going, is to the website. It's mobar, mobar.org, O-R-G, mobar.org. They have on there the actual survey results, as well as there's a 21-member committee that reviews those and gives a recommendation as to if there's issues with those particular judges. Again, that's talking about things such as is a judge knowledgeable, is a judge respectful, does a judge do things like that. It's not a matter of saying from a political perspective, because again, as judges, we are supposed to be non-political in our views, and our decisions should not be affected by political parties. So these judges aren't on a partisan, so they're not Democrat or Republican. They're nonpartisan, and it's simply a matter of how well they've been from the view of a lawyer. This is a fairly long ballot, and I would urge you to look at the actual ballot language as best that you can. There are a number of 6 propositions or amendments that are on there. The first one is Amendment number 1, which this is simply, it's been proposed to continue a 10-year 1/10 sales tax for soil and water conservation for the state parks and historic areas. This tax has been in existence, I believe, for a number of years, but the way it's worded is every 10 years it comes back to the voters to see if we want to continue this tax or not. So it is not a new tax. It's something we've been paying for a number of years. It's something that is utilized for state parks, historical sites. So a yes vote would mean that we would continue collecting that sales tax. A no vote would mean we would no longer collect that sales tax. The bottom line with Amendment 2 is campaign contributions. Currently, Missouri has no campaign contribution limits, so anyone can give any amount of money to any candidate that they wish to do. This is an attempt to set forth and put some guidelines and restrictions in place. The actual amendment itself, if you read through it, does specifically say for different offices there are different amounts. A few years ago we did have some campaign contribution in place. So this is bringing it back to that, so that certain office holders would have limits as to what an individual can give, what a political action committee could give, and also disclosure requirements as well. So a yes vote would mean that we would have some campaign contribution limits. A no vote would remain status quo with what we have. Moving on then to Amendment 3. Amendment 3, I'll be honest with you, is quite confusing. I've read through the actual language several different times trying to get an understanding of exactly what it does. But Amendment 3 has been proposed again by initiative petition that will increase the taxes on cigarettes, on an annual basis until 2020. So it basically is phasing in an income or a sales tax on cigarettes, and to where it'll be a total of 60 cents per pack of 20, and also will create a fee that the wholesalers will pay of 67 cents for 20, and it also will establish a new early childhood health and education trust fund, which all that money will go into that and be used for early childhood health education fund. The amendment does specifically set forth what things will be paid for out of that. It does, the Early Childhood Education and Trust Fund does replace an existing organization that is currently in existence. I'm sorry, the print is small and I'm having to lean back when I read this, so I apologize for that. I guess that's the age catching up a little bit more, but the Early Childhood Health and Education Fund, there will be a number of people selected by the governor to serve on that, to oversee the funds that are collected by this. That 75% of this will go towards early childhood, not less than 10% and not more than 15% will go to grants to deal with healthcare issues, healthcare facilities to combat smoking, and the remaining 5 to 10% will go towards the work towards the cessation or quit smoking, or get people to quit smoking. There are some provisions in here that specifically state that none of the funds will be used for any type of abortion services. That is specifically set forth in the amendment. That, of course, could be challenged in court as well. A lot of these amendments obviously could wind up being in court for the judges to consider whether or not that is a valid part of the amendment, where you can restrict the funds to not cover certain services. But just so you know, that it does specifically say that none of the programs shall be used for any proposed activities, programs, or initiatives that involve abortion services, including, and listed several things with regard to abortion services as provided by law.
So can an amendment, can a judge strike part of an amendment and still keep it in place?
It could, yes.
And so after the fact, they could potentially go ahead and use that money if the judge says you can't restrict it from the abortion services, that it could actually go to abortion services if the court rules that.
Correct. Okay. Correct. And that's one of the issues that has been brought up, is whether or not the amendment can actually limit that, or whether the courts will say that that's something that the amendment can't limit, what those funds can be used for.
Is this similar to like the lottery that's supposed to help schools, because we don't get the lottery money that we voted and is supposed to go to schools?
And I was hoping to be able to talk to Mark Penny about this. I talked to Randy, and he was also going to talk to him about
I will tell you,
that.
there are a lot, this way you're not having to say anything, there are a lot of educational organizations that are opposed to this.
And another good resource for you that I found that gives good information, it's ballotpedia.org, ballotpedia.org. And it gives a lot of information about who is funding some of these initiatives, what's the major contributors, which may give you some information with regard to them. For example, this one is being pushed very heavily by the tobacco industries. Several of the major tobacco industry companies are supporting this one. And as Teresa said, a lot of the educational institutions are opposed to this one.
And American Cancer Society is opposed, American Heart Association is opposed. So as they're trying to tote this as it's going to be helping to eliminate, there's a big organization. This came to us from school, giving us information on who's opposed and who's supporting.
Jim, why would the tobacco companies push it?
I don't know, except for what I've read. What I've read is that they realize and recognize that there is this movement to eliminate or reduce smoking. So they're looking at other ways that they can make money, and the way they view that they can make money off of this is that some of the money is going towards grants that they can use to try to maybe get other products that may be less harmful. That's where, according to what I've read, that's their interest in this.
I saw an advertisement online somewhere saying Amendment 3 could guarantee a right to abortion. Is that totally off the wall? Because I'm not hearing any of that here.
It's not in the language.
Okay.
I think the issue is, again, if the courts would strike down that provision that Randy mentioned, where it's because the amendment itself specifically says the money cannot be used for any type of abortion services. And if the courts would strike that down, then it certainly could be used for that.
So is this a clear yes vote is for it and no vote is against it?
A yes vote would mean you would be in favor of the amendment and the cigarette tax. A no vote would mean you were not in favor of the amendment and not for the cigarette tax.
So because they can do what they want to in the end, it's not as good as it sounds.
Well, there's potential for that. I mean, again, if it goes to the courts, the concern that a lot of pro-life groups have with it is that language in there, that kind of a reverse effect saying, well, it's in there, but the courts are going to throw it out, so therefore we should be opposed to it. That's the theory behind a lot of pro-life groups in saying that. But again, the courts could uphold it, and if so, then it would not be used for abortion services. Any other questions on Amendment 3? I really do encourage you to go to ballotpedia.org. Is really a good website that I saw that gives information about who's supporting it, kind of the background on it. Because the interesting thing about it is that the tobacco industry is in favor of this one. The Missouri Petroleum Association, which is the convenience stores, are against this one, but they're proposing the one that we'll talk about here in just a little bit, a different cigarette tax. So kind of gives you some history on that, and it also gives some editorials from different newspapers as to what their positions are and what their viewpoint on it is. The next amendment is Amendment number 4, which Amendment 4 is a little bit confusing on how you vote for it. Amendment 4 indicates shall the Constitution be amended to prohibit any new state or local sales use tax or any other similar tax or services on services or transactions that were not subject to sales tax as of January 1, 2015. So if you are voting yes for Amendment 4, which means it's almost a reverse effect. You vote yes, you're saying you want the Constitution to be amended to say there cannot be any new sales tax on any service or transaction. So if you're voting yes, you're saying we don't want any more sales tax on anything. If you're voting no, you're saying it's okay, or there's a potential for that. The history behind us to this, there's an odd mix of individuals that are supporting this, so I'm not sure exactly all their interest in it. But the language itself, let me just read it to you. It's really short, actually. It's one of the shorter actual amendments in here that you can actually read it. In order to prohibit an increase in the tax burden on the citizens of Missouri, state and local sales and use tax for any similar transaction shall not be expanded to impose taxes on any service or transaction that is not subject to any sales tax or similar transaction-based tax on January 1, 2015. So it would amend our Constitution to prohibit anyone from, or the legislature from creating a new sales tax. Doesn't mean they can't increase the current ones, but if there is something that came out that they wanted to, or local government, state or local, so it doesn't matter if it's county, city, or state, if that entity wished to propose a new sales tax, this amendment, if passed, would prohibit them from doing that.
That's like you get a tax on a haircut or something. Something
That's
that's not taxed now.
Correct. But it's for services or transactions. So it could be, again, you think of lots of scenarios. A lot of people are concerned that there may be things such as on haircuts. There's a number of attorney groups that are against it because it could be for attorneys. Accountants are against, or for this amendment. Real Estate Association is one of the big ones behind this. But again, it would prohibit services as well as any transactions. So a lot of the comments about services, but there's also transactions. So if there's a new product out there, a new tax that they want to put on something, this would prohibit that from happening.
So you vote yes if you don't want it.
Correct. The next amendment is amendment number 6, which is essentially the voter ID amendment, which has come up again. This one was proposed actually by the General Assembly, that they amend the Constitution to require, in order to vote, having a government-issued photo identification. So a yes vote would say you would have to have some sort of an identification presented when you vote. A no vote would keep things, again, the way they are. And there's provisions in the amendment that talk about how they would get that photo ID, particularly for senior citizens or for people who don't have a valid ID, because the last law that was thrown out was because there were issues of not having provisions in there to account for that. So this amendment takes care of that part of the issue, but again, it's whether or not you wish to have voter ID or not. Photo ID. So you could come in and you could show, there's a number of things you can use to vote. Most people will use their driver's license because it's simple and it's easy, and they have now a scanner that you can use to scan your driver's license on there. So for me, it's going to make no difference because that's what I use anyway. But they're not looking at your ID to see if that's who you are. You could bring in a utility payment. I forget now, there's 5 or 6 different things that you could bring in. But if this would require an actual photo ID.
Can't the court throw it out?
They did the last time. And the issue that they did it on last time was the issue that people that didn't have the means to go get a photo ID, how you would be able to address that. This now has put a provision in there that there's no cost for someone to go get a photo ID. The last one is a proposition, and just so you understand a little bit about, we get too technical, but the Proposition A is a change in the statutes versus the amendments. The amendment of the Constitution, the others were amending our Constitution. This is simply putting a provision in our statute, amending our statutes, which those can be changed by the legislature at any given time. And just like they can change laws now, they can change the speed limit law, they can change whatever it is they want to change, they can change the crimes, they can change sentences. This goes in the statute that the legislature can also change. But it is a mechanism that the state allows for initiative positions so that citizens can petition to have the voters vote to change our laws, not just amendments. So Proposition A is an amendment to the statutes, not to the Constitution. But it also is a cigarette tax. It is increasing, again, over time. In the years 2017, 2019, and 21, an additional 23 cents on cigarettes, and that will, and also a 5% on manufacturers' prices, and that will be used, according to the statutory provision, will be used to fund essentially highway projects. The one interesting note about this, though, is there is a specific provision in this, which is a little bit unusual, which says that in the event any tax increase or on cigarettes or other tobacco products are certified to be placed on any local or statewide ballot, then this would eliminate this provision. So if this passes, and next year an initiative position is certified by the Secretary of State to say we wanted to increase cigarette taxes, that would null out and void out this provision of the statute, which is interesting.
What about Amendment 3?
Well, they're in conflict with each other, and so if Amendment 3 passes, it supersedes this proposition. If they both should pass, Amendment 3 takes precedent. If Proposition A only passes and next year Amendment 3 comes back in another form, it would nullify this even if it wasn't passed. It simply says if something is certified to be on the ballot, this goes away. Not that something else passes, it's simply that it got on the ballot. So a yes vote would increase the cigarette tax on this one up to 23 cents, and that money would be earmarked specifically for transportation and infrastructure projects. And this one, as I indicated, was the one supported by the Missouri Petroleum Association, which is basically your convenience stores are supporting this one. They're opposing Amendment 3. Tobacco industry supporting Amendment 3 and opposing this proposition. So there are a number of resources out there. I tell everybody, when I say this, understand what I mean. I don't necessarily care how you vote, but I do care that you're an informed voter. And I think that's what we want to be, is an informed voter. We can make decisions. We can disagree on issues. I know what Pastor's been talking about on things. As churches, we disagree on issues. But the bottom line, if we're informed and we know what we're voting on, then I think we make it better decisions. I'll make no further comments on the presidential election. I'll let you sort that one out on your own. But